So the next Hebraism as we move through the Bible is we're now in Genesis chapter 10, chapter 11 we're going to look at tonight. And there's several Hebraisms in the issue of Nimrod and the issue of the Tower of Babel. So I'll bring those out and we'll have a full-fledged teaching on all of that. And relate it to, not just what happened in the past, but relate it to the future as well, because Nimrod and the Tower of Babel are typologies which point forward to a future fulfillment happening. So we'll talk about that as we go. So in chapter 10 of Genesis, you start in verse 8, where it says, Cush begot Nimrod. And it's starting to give all the genealogies of the descendants of Adam and Eve and the lines that are coming through. And so Nimrod, his name in Hebrew means to rebel. So automatically, this guy, he probably was named after what he did. And so he started the human rebellion really on a global scale. Not on an individual scale, but he caused human rebellion on a mass humanity scale. So this is why Nimrod is a picture of the Antichrist. Unlike Adam and Eve falling and rebelling on a personal level, or Cain rebelling on a personal level, Nimrod causes the whole humanity to rebel against God. Other names that come from Nimrod and that seem to pick up in other mythologies, some have called him Sargon the Great, some have called him, which is the founder of the city of Akkad, Naram-Sin, the warlike grandson of Sargon. Marduk is another popular name for him. He's the god of Babylon. I think has really good evidence. Narnuta, the Babylonian god of war, the god of hunt, which is called the arrow or the mighty hero. He's also pictured sometimes as Gilgamesh, who was the great hunter in the Sumerian literature. Numarad, meaning the man of the city of Marad. Tekulti, Neruta the first, an Assyrian king who captured Babylon, carried off the idol of Marduk, and was the first to rule both Babylon and Assyria. In Greek mythology, sometimes he's referred to as Orion, the Greek mythical hunter, and Ninos, the Greek folk hero. So the thing about it is what you start realizing when you look at all the different mythologies and different religions of the ancient world, they come back and center on these particular individuals and their corruptions of what the Bible is saying. And you'll see elements of truth in all these mythologies. But nonetheless, it's talking about this one guy. And in the ancient culture, they did a lot of worshiping of humans. And, if you were mighty or a king or whatever, they saw you as a god on earth, very much like the Egyptians saw their pharaohs as gods on earth. So anyway, then it says this, he began to be a mighty one on the earth. And the Hebrew word for mighty is Gabor. And if you note that it's on the earth, and that's tying it to something else. So Gabor sometimes should cause, when you see that mighty, it should cause your antennas to go up. That means something. It's connected to Genesis 6:4. There were giants on the earth. So notice the term on the earth is the same as on the earth with Nimrod. So Moses is establishing a connection between Nimrod and the giants on the earth. And then it says, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men and they bore children to them, those were the mighty men, or the Gibborim. That's the plural Hebrew of it, the Gibborim, ha-Gibborim, who were of old, men of renown, or the men of the name, or men who were famous because of what they did, because these men, the giants, should be translated Nephilim, which means fallen ones, and these were the offspring of the Bana Chal Elohims coming upon the daughters of men and creating these hybrids we call Nephilim. which were also called mighty men or Gibborim. So what you have happening here in Genesis 10 is Moses is establishing a connection point between Nimrod and Genesis 6 with the same wording of Gibor and on the earth. So there's a connection happening here. And then he'll mention this 3 times, that he was a mighty or Gibor hunter. Again, the Gibor is connected to Genesis 6. That's the same terminology. But now it says he's a hunter. And this is where the Jewish idiom comes into play. It doesn't mean he's a hunter of animals. He might have started out that way, but because he caused a worldwide rebellion, what the Jewish idiom means is that he was able to snare men with his words to incite them against God. So he led a rebellion against God. So if you just read it that he was just a hunter, then you're not getting the Jewish idiom. And so we would talk about, the words that we would use is like propaganda, deception, lies, false narratives, stuff like that. The false narrative that Josephus gives, and Josephus is probably carrying out the oral tradition on Babylon and Nimrod, was that he was able to cause them through fear that they would be killed again by God in another flood, and that through that propaganda of fear, that he was able to get them to coalesce to come together, to build a city, to build a tower for security reasons, to preserve their life, because in his propagandized words, God was the threat. And lest they be scattered over the earth, it says, and the idea there was that if they are scattered, then they won't be able to survive the way the world is with the animals, and then also if another flood comes. And so Josephus notes that this was part of the Jewish tradition in their understanding of what propaganda was going on at the time. Is that true? I don't know. That's speculation. We don't have that in Scripture, but I think it's a fairly decent speculation based on it does say, so lest we be scattered. So there was something there about the fear of being scattered all over the planet. And so what he was able to do is change the dominion mandate, which was given to God by be fruitful and multiply, have dominion over the earth, which means to scatter and take dominion over the planet. He was actually able to take that and put it in a negative spin and change the truth and make it a negative. So it's kind of Isaiah 5, where you call good evil and evil good. He was able to reverse that, and people believed it. And he was able to cause a panic with people. And that if you think about that, that's not any different than what we have seen the governments and the NIH and the Echo Health and the Wuhan lab leaks and all that kind of stuff, where they were able to cause a panic and a fear among people. And fear is a very primal urge with people, and threatening them with death and stuff like that causes people to do irrational things, and they did. And we saw that. You have a good example in the last 5 years, I think it was now. You have a good example right in front of you of watching the entire world go into a mass panic. So what this is saying is he did that. He was able to do that with the concept of changing the truth, of taking dominion and changing that into being the negative, saying that's a threat to you, a threat to your life. I'm going to provide security for you. I'll provide safety for you. And so do what I tell you to do. Clump up together. We'll build a tower. We'll build a city. And that will bring us security and protect your life. And you can see, like, oh my goodness, that's the same kind of mantra that they use today. That's no different than what's going to be used in the future when the Antichrist does come on the scene. He's going to use that type of language with lying signs and wonders. So he will have not only a false propaganda and a false narrative, but he will have lying signs and wonders that go with that to supernaturally con people into what he's saying. And I don't know what he could say to cause people to come under him and under his rule, but it could be that we're under alien attack. We've got to come together as human beings. These attacks are happening all over the planet. These aliens have caused all the water to turn to blood. The aliens have caused the earth to be scorched. The aliens have caused famines and stuff like that to happen. We've seen aliens flying in the air. And so we got to come together, come under my leadership, and I'll protect you against the aliens. I don't know. It would be something like that. I mean, because they're going to have to explain, or he's going to at least have to explain the supernatural aspects that are going on in the tribulation and spin that to be maybe a technological attack rather than a supernatural judgment from God. Something of that nature, possibly. So he's definitely going to spin it. No doubt about that. So that's what he does, is he spins it. So anyway, he ensnares the men with the words, and he causes them to clump up. And again, here's another idiom right off the bat. So you have the hunter, and then before the Lord. So he's a Gabor before the Lord. So he hunts men down with his words. He propagandizes them. And he does this before the Lord. And before the Lord is a Jewish idiom which means antagonism towards God, in opposition to God, which with intentions to actually provoke God, which is very Antichrist-esque, because the Antichrist opens his mouth and blasphemes the God of heaven. He provokes God. And that's a telltale sign of the Antichrist, is its constant provoking of God and daring God to do something to stop him. And that's what the idiom is meaning. So when you put the two idioms together, so you have a Gibor, which is connected to Genesis 6, rebellion, hybrid situation going on there, with propagandizing people against God. That's what he's doing. He's propagandizing people against God. And so so when you look at Genesis, you have three major problems that happen. You have the fall, you have Genesis 6, and then you have the Tower of Babel. And these are the foundations of the evil that we see today. And this is what has to be reconciled at the end. And so for you to understand what's happening here is to understand the future, what awaits us. This all will repeat itself on a global scale. Everything you see here will repeat itself. So that's why the idioms are important, because if you understand that he's not just a hunter of animals, he's a hunter of men, that's what the Antichrist does. That's what the spirit of lawlessness does. It hunts men. And the way it hunts men is it hunts them down to deceive them, to blind them to the truth. So that's what's going on here, and in opposition to God, right? So, couple things here. So I want to bring out Carol van der Turn and Peter W. van der Horst, if I can pronounce that right. And this is from the Journal of American Oriental Society. And I want you to note what they say. Here's a medley of allusions to Genesis 6, both the motif of the giants and that of the flood, and Genesis 11, the building of the Tower of Babel. The intermediate link is Nimrod from Genesis 10. We note the connection of Nimrod with the story of the giants in Genesis 6 on the one hand, and with the story of Babel on the other. There are several reasons for this connection. The offspring of the sons of God are called Gibborim, or in the Septuagint, it's Gigantes, in Genesis 6:4. And Nimrod is also called a Gibor, or a Gigas, in the Septuagint, in Genesis 10. This suggests that Nimrod may have been one of the giants in Genesis 6. In Genesis 10:10, the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom is said to have been Babel in the land of Shinar. And in Genesis 11, the people who settled in the land of Shinar are said to have built a city where that was called Babel. In that city was the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom. He cannot but have been one of its builders. So Nimrod, who was one of the giants of Genesis 6, was also the one who had built Babel. So what they're doing is linking Nimrod with one of the giants of Genesis 6, or that he is a giant. And what I want to show you that is that there is a good connection or good deduction that Nimrod is a Nephilim, that he is not fully human because of what Moses is doing by connecting him to Genesis 6. So he's a Gibor, he's a mighty man of old, he is a Nephilim. He is an offspring then of a fallen angel and a human. In Genesis 6, it speaks of Nephilim as the giants, the men of renown, and refers to them as Gibborim, the mighty ones. Those who were the mighty men, or Gibborim, or gigantes, who were of old men of renown, or the men of the name. The same Hebrew word Gibor, or Gigas, is used of Nimrod in Genesis 10. The term Gibor does not inherently mean giant, though it can in context. So you have Joshua's men fought against the Anakim, who are also called Gibborim, who are giant clans. David, though, will be called a Gibor, as is Gideon. Even God is described as a Gibor, or mighty, but Goliath is also called a Gibboram. So it depends on what context you're looking at with the term Gibor or Gibborim or Gibboram. And when you're obviously in the context of Goliath and it's calling him a Gibborim or Gibboram, it's obviously he's a giant. He's a Nephilim. And I think the connection Moses is doing with the same terminologies in Genesis 10 and Genesis 6 indicate that you have a good deduction that Nimrod was a giant. Same as the king of Bashan, King Og. He was a giant, and Israel had to deal with him. I'll make the connection right now. So we have a second witness that Nimrod is a possible giant, a Nephilim. And the second witness is the term Amorite, which is used of giant clans in Amos 2, 9 through 10, and Deuteronomy 2 and 3. So what you have here from Dr. Michael Heiser, he says the Amorite culture was Mesopotamian. The word for Amorite actually comes from a Sumerian word, Martu, which vaguely referred to the area and population west of Sumer and Babylon. Og was a king of the Amorites who ruled in the region of Bashan. Bashan was the eastern side of Mount Hermon in Israel, but it was in the Jordanian side area, okay? The most immediate link back to Babylon's polemic is Og's bed. Its dimensions, if you remember in the scriptures, it's 9 by 4 cubits. It's massive, which indicates that he's a giant. But here's the connection to Babylon and the connection to Nimrod. That 9 by 4 cubits is precisely those of the cultic bed in the ziggurat called Etemenaki, which is the ziggurat most archaeologists identify as the Tower of Babel referred to in the Bible. Ziggurats functioned as temples and divine abodes. The unusual large bed of Etemenaki was housed in the house of the bed. It was a place where the god Marduk and the divine wife Zarpanutu met annually for ritual lovemaking, the purpose of which was divine blessing upon the land. So Dr. Michael Heisner is also making connections with the clan, the giant clan, the Amorites. And the giant clan, the Amorites, the king had a bed because he's a giant that matched the same dimensions as the one in the Tower of Babel in that superstructure. And obviously what he's trying to do is show you that there's a connection with this giant. And obviously the giant would be either Marduk or we would call Nimrod. And so this is a second witness that the possibility that Nimrod is a giant. So it's more than just using the word Gibber or Gibborim. It's having to do with the connection of Og's bed with the Babylonian bed in the ziggurat Etemenaki. Okay, so what you end up happening as Dr. Michael Heiser points out, it links Babylon back to Genesis 6 and its divine transgression. The Nimrod description in Genesis 10 in the so-called Table of Nations is therefore the theological bridge between the violation of Genesis 6 and the next momentous event in the Torah that will frame the entire story of Israel, the Tower of Babel. The biblical writer wastes no time in linking this act to the earlier divine transgression of Genesis 6. That passage sought to portray the giant quasi-divine Babylon culture heroes, the Apkalus, which were, the Apkalus were 2/3 spirit and 1/3 human. Does that sound familiar with the Nephilim? Yeah, because the Nephilim were half human and half spirit creatures who were the offspring of pure Apkalus. So I'm using Babylonian terminology here. Who taught divine knowledge and who mated with human women and produced quasi-divine offspring. So what Dr. Michael Heiser is trying to point out is that the Babylonian mythology or their religion, they had the story of Genesis 6, but they were called Nephilim, they were called Apkalus. And so we call them the Benacha Elohims that fell and mated with humans and created a hybrid. So the Babylonian mythology called them Apkalus. And the Apkalus, there was a one set of them that were 100% divine, okay? And these divine creatures are what taught Babylon its mystery religions and its occultic religions and everything, and divine knowledge of warfare, weaponry, everything. But then they mated with human women. And when they mated, they created another set of Apkalus. But this set of Apkalus are not 100% pure. They are 2/3 spirit and 1/3 human. And hence, there is the picture of Genesis 6 in the Babylonian mythology and Babylonian religion. Now, they call them 2/3 spirit and 1/3 human, but in our biblical terminology, they were half human and half angelic is the concept. And again, if you just swap Apkalu with Nephilim, then that'll make sense. But what is Dr. Heiser trying to show? He's trying to show the link that connects not only with the Tower of Babel and Genesis 6, but the embryonic truth is also found in Mesopotamian religion literature as well. So the Sumerian world, the Mesopotamian area, they all knew about what happened here. And then that got carried on to other religions, Greek mythology, all that stuff. When you studied Greek mythology in high school, what you were really studying is Genesis 6. That's what you were studying. And it doesn't shock me that you had the term clash of the titans, which I think the Phoenician word is chitons, which is coming from the word Satans. It was the clash of the Satans. It wasn't the clash of the Titans. And so when you see someone's football team named the Titans, it's actually named after Satan. I can't believe people would name their football team Titans. But anyway, Titans means, that's the derivative. It comes back to the Satans. It was the clash of the Satans. And so in Babylonian mythology, it was Marduk, I think it was, I'm going off the top of my head, but Marduk would actually, when they found out that the Apkalus had done this, that Marduk sent them into the Babylonian hell, which is exactly what you see 2 Peter and Jude mention that happened to these fallen angels that did that. They were sent to Tartarus. So the Babylonian religion had elements of Genesis 6. By the way, the Babylonian religion also said that a giant is the one who built the Tower of Babel. And what Dr. Michael Heiser and these other scholars I showed you is making the point that there's a good chance that Nimrod was also a giant. And the Babylonian religion also says the guy who built the Tower of Babel was a giant as well. They call him Billo or something like that. But the name is not important. It's the concept of who built the tower. And they said it was a giant. And then we're seeing this here mention that as well. Okay, so why is that important? Why is it important to understand that Nimrod is possibly a Nephilim? What is the big deal? What does it matter to you? What does it matter to me? What does it matter for the future? I'll tell you why it matters. Because like I said, Nimrod is a typology for the Antichrist. He is a picture of what the Antichrist will do, and possibly a picture of the origins of the Antichrist. That's why I'm bringing up scholarly papers to show you that it's not off the rocker to say that. Scholars hold to this. It's just never taught because people don't want to go in that direction because it opens a can of worms for the pastor and it opens a can of worms for people. But if that's what it's saying, and that's what the Hebrew idioms are referring to, and that's what the context is trying to tell us, then we have a good speculation that the Antichrist is not going to be fully human, that he's a hybrid. And the fact that it says in Genesis 3:15 that he's the seed of the serpent gives an indication that it's the singular seed of the serpent. He's Satan's son. Whereas it says the seed of the woman in contrast, and it's singular. The seed of the woman is the Messiah. But who's the seed of the serpent? Well, all your commentators will say, well, it's just people in rebellion to God. No, you can't do that. That's not what that says. It's singular. Yes, it could be taken in plural, but the context of Genesis 3:15 is singular because the singular with the Messiah is used. It's not plural. It's used singular. So why would I go plural before that and then use a singular for the Messiah? So Genesis 3:15 says that Satan will have a son. He will have a seed. Furthermore, if I go to Revelation chapter 17, when it talks about the Antichrist suffering a head wound, and he dies, and he's resurrected, well, he resurrects out of the abuso, out of the bottomless pit. And only fallen angels go to the bottomless pit. Humans do not go to the bottomless pit. When we say that humans that are not saved go to hell, they're actually, what technically we're saying is they're going to the pit, but not the bottomless pit. The bottomless pit are reserved for fallen angels, temporarily confined fallen angels. Tartarus is for permanently confined fallen angels. So Antichrist resurrects from the abuso. Well, that's odd because no humans are ever sent to the abuso other than him, which is an indication of his nature, that he's not fully human, that he is satanic. So when you put this all together, it gives you a pretty good theory, and I'm using the word theory based on deduction on those passages and this, that the Antichrist may not be fully human, but perhaps is a hybrid. Which, again, you don't have to agree with that, but I think the deduction based on all of this and based on Nimrod is a good deduction, that he's not fully human. And since we are talking about in an age of transhumanism, I don't think that's out of the realm. I don't think that's out of the realm to even think those terms. And plus, if I believe in Genesis 6 and that there was a hybrid eruption that happened, why do I not think it's not going to happen again with at least one person, that being the Antichrist? And by the way, just me knowing demonology and me understanding the case studies of possession and people that have been involved in the occult, this kind of stuff with sexual raping of human beings happens all the time. All the time. Humans are raped repeatedly when they're involved in the occult. This is what the whole UFO phenomenon, where the person is sexually molested by aliens, which mirrors satanic ritual abuse, which mirrors the incubus and succubus types of phenomenon that go on all the time. So I know it gets weird real quick, but I'm telling you, that's what's going on in the occult. That is what's happening. Women describe being raped. Men describe being raped. but there's no physical entity doing that. It is a spiritual entity. So the incubus and succubus is happening. So why would I not think it's not going to happen with Satan impregnating a female one day to create the Antichrist? It's not out of the possibility. It happened in the past. They do it now. So why is this? So just to go into that tangent, why is this? That in UFOlogy, which does not want to go and say it's spiritual, they don't want to say it's demons, they don't want to say it's fallen angels, why are there always, the aliens are always messing with the genitalia and impregnating women? Why are they doing that? And then the pregnancy disappears after a while. Why are they doing that? Why does the U.S. Navy report that some of their ladies were pregnant and then stopped being pregnant all of a sudden? Why is that? Why did the Pentagon state that? Why did they do that? Why were they hiding it for so long? What was going on there? So that's what I'm saying. This is not some stuff that comes out of nowhere from some idiot that's drunk and saw something. Our Pentagon is saying that. Our Navy is saying that. Okay. Well, they won't say that these are spirit creatures. They always want to call them aliens or whatever from a different dimension or whatever. But I can tell you what they are. They did it in the past. They've been doing it, and they will continue to do it. They always want to mess with the sexual reproduction of humans. Always. And I think you're going to see more of that as time goes on. As more and more people accept the concept of the evolution idea of aliens, which is an evolutionary mindset, right? That these creatures are just more evolved than us, right? That more and more people accept that, they're going to accept now the government coming out and saying, well, here's all the files, here's what we have, we've reverse engineered all kinds of things, and here's what's happening, and these are aliens, these are our space buddies. And they're not. They're demons. They're demons. You understand that demons are shapeshifters. So are fallen angels. They're shapeshifters. They can manifest into anything they want to manifest. They can look like your dead relative. They can do anything they want. They can take on physicality. That's not a problem for them. That's why they appear on radar and they disappear on radar. They can take on. They can come into our dimension and leave our dimension. That's what they do. But they don't want to call them that for some reason in the government. So why? Why don't they want to call them that? Why does it benefit the government not to call them what they really are and instead call them aliens? Why does it benefit them for that? Why does it benefit the UN to call them aliens? Why does it benefit the Catholic Church to call them aliens? Why does it do that? Why do they do that? Why does it call them what they are? So all of that is within this realm of possibility and is going on. It's a phenomenon that's going on. Anyway, again, it mentions that he's a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore, it is said. So it's 3 times. 3 times it mentions that he's a gibor, and he's a hunter, and he's before the Lord, in opposition to the Lord. Why would Moses say it 3 times? Because when you see a biblical writer say something 3 times, he is making an emphatic point. This guy is seriously evil. This guy is meaning business. This guy's something different, okay? So anyway, he's a rebel. He's possibly a Nephilim. He's garnering the world in opposition to God with a false propaganda, and they're going to build something now, okay? So, and in the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, Calneh in the land of Shinar. That's the Fertile Crescent, the Babylonian region, what we call Iraq today. From that, the land he went to Assyria and built Nineveh, Rehoboth, Ir, Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. That is the principal city. So this guy went on a building tirade and started building cities like there's no tomorrow. He was a definite city builder. But here's what we have to understand, a few things that we start unpacking now. Now, the whole earth had one language and one speech. So it's basically in the Hebrew, it's one lip. And the concept of one speech means one vocabulary. So one lip, one vocabulary. Now, by the way, this is a typology. We are going back in that direction. And so the idea is that the world will go back to one lip, one speech in its communication. So now you can see with modern advances in technology, you can speak someone else's language with just using an app. It's real simple. And so the language barriers are now gone now. You can put on an app, it'll speak for you. I've been in different countries and someone's trying to speak English and they'll speak their language in their little app and then their little app speaks to us. And that's it, that's all it needs. You don't need a translator, you have apps now. It's the technology creates the one lip now that we need. And it came to pass as they journeyed from the east. Now notice it says they journeyed from the east. When you see anyone journey from the east, that's always in a negative area. That's a negative direction. That's an area away from God. And this goes to the rabbinic tradition that the garden temple was situated where Jerusalem is at today. Now, the landscape of the earth was a lot different back then, but the concept of Jerusalem, where it was at, and that Temple Mount, in being the place where everything happens, this is why the speculation by the rabbis said that this is where the garden temple was at. It makes sense in many regards because that's where the Temple of Solomon was put. That's where the second temple was put, Zerubbabel's temple, and that's where Messiah will build his temple, is in that location. That's where Messiah was crucified. This is where Jacob's ladder appeared. This is where Abraham took Isaac. Everything happened here. And so the speculation from the rabbis, I think, is fairly decent, that the temple garden was in the vicinity of where Jerusalem, which means that when Adam and Eve are kicked out, they went east. And the direction of their going is east. When Abraham separated from Lot, Lot went east. He went into Sodom and Gomorrah. So every direction going east is a negative connotation. It is a spiritual declension going into the east. And so, so if the garden temple is in the west, you're moving away. So that meant that if you were going to have a relationship with God, and you had to go to the garden temple, you had to make sacrifices in the front of the temple. And, of course, the cherubim prevented you from coming into the holy place and the Holy of Holies, but you would make your sacrifice in front of it, which meant that you had to keep fairly close proximity to the garden temple if you're going to make sacrifices constantly. So their direction of moving away means that they're not thinking about making sacrifices to God, which means they're breaking away from their relationship with God. That's what the idea of going east away from the garden temple is I'm moving away from my relationship with God. That's what this rebellion is talking about. Okay, so the land of Shinar is the Babylonian region. It's the region of Iraq today, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They had brick for stone and they had asphalt for mortar. So the first thing that Moses wants you to see is there's a spiritual metaphor happening with the building materials. So what you see is the overarching theme is the rejection of God's design in the building materials. It's man-made versus God-made. So what you see early on in the Bible is that the altars that you would make to God had to be made out of stone. So what you had to do, if you made an altar to God, you would have to go out and you would get stone and you would piece it together and fit the stone together to where it made an altar. You couldn't use asphalt, you couldn't use mortar or anything like that. You had to find the right stones that fit together to make your altar. And that's what God accepted. And the concept of the stones is what is naturally occurring. It is that which God provides, okay? And if you use what God provides and fit them correctly, it makes a proper sacrifice, is the concept, okay? And that's how the temple was constructed, okay? You had to have the proper stones cut. You couldn't be cut on the site. It had to be cut off the site. and then you would fit them together. Okay, so when you see them making bricks by human, you start having a uniform size, right? So stones are different. You have to piece them together because they're all different sizes and stones. But a brick is uniform. And so the brick symbolizes human effort and artificial unity because all of them are the same, okay? And bricks appear to be strong, but they break under judgment. They can crack. And one of the things about bricks, the bricks are symbolic of how Nimrod and the people of Babylon look at people. They don't see them made in the image of God, a la the stones, and we're called living stones, by the way, in the New Testament, being built up in a spiritual house. Because living stones have different shapes and sizes, right? They're unique. Every stone is unique, but a brick is not unique. So the way the Babylonian elites looked at people was they saw them as uniform. That if one of them broke, we can just replace them with another. It's basically seeing human beings as utilitarian, okay? So the building material also is symbolic of people, is the idea. Just like the altars are symbolic of people with living stones being fit together to create an altar. Furthermore, they used slime or asphalt or bitumen to hold everything together. Say, when you made an altar to God and you fit the stones accordingly to the different shapes and sizes, they stuck together. You didn't need anything to keep them together. So now that they're stacking bricks one another, they needed slime or asphalt or bitumen to keep them together. So it was kind of an adhesive that keeps them together. So what is that a symbol of? So if I'm bringing people together under a global empire, and I see people as uniform, and I want them to think uniformitarian, I then have to have an ideology or a religion that gives them the glue to keep together. Does that make sense? I have to have something to unify them around, an ideology, a false religion, because I'm now creating an alternative system other than what God's created. And so the slime represents false religion or false ideology. And I don't care today what you want to call it. You want to call it wokeism. You want to call it the Whore of Babylon. You want to call it, whatever. What happens is when you build something like this and you don't have truth, because truth unifies, and you don't have truth, you have to come up with a false narrative to unify. You have to force it on people, and that's the glue that sticks them together. Hence, this is why Babylon must have, the commercial Babylon and political Babylon must have religious Babylon to go with it. And that's the Whore of Babylon. And the Whore of Babylon is the mother of harlots. She brings out all the false ideology, the false religion, and that is what's used to knit people together. So today, as an example, what's knitting people together is LGBT agenda, transgender agenda, save the planet agenda, or whatever agenda, New Age Jesus agenda, whatever. All those Marxism, socialism agenda, communism agenda, fascism agenda, all that stuff is the glue that the whore is using to bring the bricks together and unite them. And they're holding them together in spiritual rebellion to God. That's what the idea is. Now notice the bitumen is black, it is sticky, and it is man-made, which represents evil, sin, and deceptive unity. It's a false unity. It's not real. True unity is centered around truth. But look at this. Just as bitumen bound the man-made bricks, false religion binds together the people of Babel in rebellion against God. They chose human innovation over divine provision, which is symbolic of rebellion against God's order, and burning bricks was advanced technology at the time. Does that sound familiar? We're going to unite everybody around an ideology, but we're going to do it in concert with advanced technology in order to unite people. Does that sound familiar? Totally. You have to see the parallels with what's going on today. So the whore of Babylon gives you the ideology, but I have to have the technology to unite people too. So the advent of AI gives you the ability to look at everybody and what they're doing. It gives you the ability to know what they're doing. The advent of a digital technology, digital coins, a digital currency, surveillance. All of that. So the rabbis even conjectured that Nimrod would sit at the top of the tower. Why? So he could see everybody. What does that sound like? That's called surveillance. So isn't that funny? These are ancient rabbis mentioning and speculating that he sat on the top of the tower so he could look down on everybody to see what they were doing. That's surveillance. So you have to have, in order to build the Tower of Babel, you have to have an ideology. You have to make everybody uniform in their thinking, a la social engineering, public schools, colleges, social media. Got it? You seen the connections? And then we're going to unite them with the black tar, and then we're going to make it all work through technology, advances in technology. It sounds like today. And they said, come let us build ourselves a city. So it wasn't just a tower, it was a city. It's what's wrong with a city? Well, the city, in this context, represents security without God. The city was meant for protection, economic control, and centralized authority. A centralized authority? Economic control? Yeah. I thought I'd get my protection from God. Economic control? I thought we believe in free markets. Not them. Centralized authority? What's the problem with centralized authority? They run everything. We believe in local authority, not centralized authority. What's the problem with centralized authority? I'll give you an example. The Catholic Church, centralized authority. What's the problem with one guy being in control of everything? Any problems with that? Yeah, one guy goes crazy, he ruins the whole thing. Centralized authority. We believe the Bible teaches localized authority. That in the towns or in your neighborhood, you have localized authority. We don't have Washington, D.C. telling me what to do over here. We have local authority. This is the problem, like I've told you before, like with our public schools. There's no local autonomy here. They get all their marching orders from Sacramento. That's not local authority. That's a centralized authority. That's Babylon. So when you see centralized authorities, that's Babylonian. We believe in local. That's why denominationalism is wrong too. Because why? In churches, when you have a denomination telling the churches what to do, it's a centralized authority. We believe in local church autonomy. That every local church has its own authority. I don't answer to some denomination. That would be Babylonianism. And where did that come from? Oh, the Catholic Church. That's right, but Babylon entered into the Catholic Church. Oh, okay, got it. So, Babel City was built apart from God. Meaning that man is creating his own security system apart from God, right? And so the echoes of Cain's line, who also built a city after being cast from God's presence. That's what Cain did. They built a city. It's the first thing he did for security reasons. The city was a tool of control. Babylon City was intended to unify people under one language, one government, and one ideology. It was the first world order. Does that sound familiar? One language, one government, one ideology. It was the prototype of political Babylon, which resurfaces in Daniel and Revelation as a system that oppresses God's people. And notice the term they use. Here's the propaganda. Lest we be scattered. So he propagandized the dominion mandate, and they feared the divine mandate of spreading out, having babies, and taking dominion of the planet. Wait a second. That sounds familiar. Go have babies. What do the leftists tell you to do about babies? Don't have babies. Abort your babies. Oh. And what do they tell you about having dominion over the planet? And what does dominion mean? It means harnessing the natural resources of the planet to benefit mankind. A good example of that is going after oil and gas for cheap energy would be a sign of dominion mandate having accomplishing that. But them saying, let's go off of fossil fuels is exactly straight from Babylon. Let's not have babies, and let's not harness the natural. Let's go back to 1753 and live like cavemen. Oh, okay, that's Babylon. Thank you. Lest we be scattered. The city was not just political, it was spiritual. It represented man-centered worship, governance, and identity. This is spiritual Babylon. We will rule without God. Now notice this. Now it gets interesting. You ready for the weird part? And they said, come let us build a city and a tower. So it's not just a city, a tower whose top is in the heavens. So now here's another Jewish idiom. Whose top is in heaven. If you just read that in English, you're not going to get the Jewish idiom. It doesn't mean we want to build the highest tower in the world so we can stand up in the clouds. It doesn't mean that. That's nonsense. It's an idiom which means we want to reach out to the heavens where the gods are. We want to come in contact with where the gods are. We want to create a portal so that we create a gate. That's what Babel means, the gate of God. Not the one true God, but the gods. We want to create a portal that creates a spiritual gateway between the physical realm and the spiritual realm, so that the spirit creatures come through this realm and into the physical realm, and we, as the physical creatures, can go and enter into the spiritual realm and vice versa, back and forth. We want to create this. And that's what the tower is for. So we want a gateway. We want to believe that the gods that are in the skies, and which creatures are in the heavens. What does Paul say? It is the fallen angels that are in the heavenlies. Demons are on the earth. The fallen angels are in space. Okay? So we want them to come down to here, which is the opposite of Jacob's ladder. We want them to come down here, and we want to meet with them there on the top of the ziggurat. And we will construct this portal at the top of these ziggurats. That's what the ziggurats are. And it's a door, basically, to the demonic realm. So it's not just about reaching heaven physically. It's an attempt to access the divine realm or the spiritual realm without submission to God. And the people basically created a new religious system independent of Yahweh that would unite people around this man-centered worship, and it created Mystery Babylon. And so they were trying, and they did get in touch with the fallen angels. And this is why the Babylonian religion created what we call the mystery religion. It's why it's called Mystery Babylon. Because mystery means that something that's withheld is now being let out. And that's what the word occult means. It means that fallen angels have information about our world that we are not supposed to have. We are not intended to know these kinds of things. God doesn't want us to know these things. But what the problem is, when people tap into that realm, These spirit creatures that are fallen have no problem dishing out the information in a contract. And they dish out the information, and that information then creates chaos in our world. Just like in Genesis 6, just like at the Tower of Babel, and just like it does today. Anyone that taps into that, they go into there and they're told that they're going to be given the secrets of our reality. And they do. And they do get the secrets. And they come out and they invent things. In the music industry, they create songs. It's just weird stuff. I mean, stuff gets downloaded to people's heads, and then they go and invent something. A math problem that no human being can solve. This guy in India goes to his avatar. His avatar gives him the ability to solve the math problem. He comes back the next day, solves the math problem. They said, how did you do it? He goes, my avatar told me how to do it. Well, who's the avatar? Well, it was a fallen angel who knows more than we do and can reveal the secrets of the universe. They know how we're created. They know about DNA. They know all of this. And they reveal that. Who do you think's given Silicon Valley the information? Who do you think's given them that? We're doing things now that we can't keep up with. The technology is going to get beyond us in the next 5 years. Imagine people now having sex robots instead of just having dates. They're not going to date anymore. Because if you can tell someone you can buy a sex robot and you don't have to have a relationship with anybody, that's what they're going to do. It'll be that advanced. Within 5 years, you reach AI general knowledge, and you reach super intelligence in 5 years. That means the AI will be smarter than anybody on the planet. The AI will do its own computing. It will do its own thinking. It won't need anybody at that point. Who taught it? Who taught man weapons? Who taught man how to do divination? Who did that? It was the fallen angels in Genesis 6. And what are they doing now? The same thing, but they're creating things that will destroy us. They're giving us the idea to destroy it, things that will destroy us at some point if God doesn't intervene. And so when you look at the Tower of Babel, what I want you to understand is you're looking at the future. These concepts that seem ancient, it's the same thing. Technology. Think about this in history. The German people, high technology, right? Low Christianity in their country. And what happened? You had the Holocaust. And who did they go after? The Jews. I wonder why the Jews. Oh, because the Jews play an end-time role. So you have a mixture of high technology, Satanism and New Age spirituality, lack of Christianity, and they thought these people were so advanced, and what did they do? They nearly killed every Jew on the planet. And Hitler almost took over everything. That's a preview of the Antichrist. When you have a megalomaniac, and you have technology, and you have all this stuff coalescing, then they attack the Jews. Now, here's the interesting thing. You know about Operation Paperclip. We brought all over the German scientists over here. They created NASA. Our rocket technology comes from the Germans. The same technology we're using today for rockets came from Germany. But here's the interesting thing. They were developing the rocket technology in the 1930s. It's the same technology we use today. They were, 80 years or 90 years ahead of their time? How did they get 90 years ahead of their time? How did they know to make those things? How did they know? Somebody's given them information. Do you think they did? How come they were the only ones to invent it? And we haven't come up anything else other than their technology since then. You would think, why can't we develop anything else? How come we can't develop anything else? Something happened in the 30s. Something happened. We brought them over here. That's all our technology. And now NASA's nothing anymore. And we have, Elon Musk doing SpaceX that he's now rescuing astronauts. But where did that technology come from? Where did the technology from Silicon Valley come from? You think humans are that smart to create that? I don't. Because it's too fast. It's exponential. And by the way, when they create it, it's damaging to humans. It's anti-civilization. Every time. That's what was happening in Babylon. That was happening in Genesis 6. Anyway, any questions?
So if back in those days you had people that were giants, how come we're not seeing giants right now and really strange people, 6 fingers and whatever?
Yeah, because I think the penalty attached to it is enough to stop them from doing it anymore. And the penalty was, if you do that, you're going to Tartarus. And so no fallen angel wants to be confined permanently until the great white throne judgment. And so that backed them off. But it seems to be, Second Temple literature is that Satan was able to convince at least 200 to do it for the team, take one for the team. And they did. And again, he lies to them and says, look, who knows what the lie was. Take one for the team, I'll get you out of there. It's going to stop everything. If Messiah doesn't come, then we win. So you're going to be seen as heroes in the satanic realm. And so he was able to convince at least what we understand is 200 of them, maybe more, maybe less. But the main reason is why it doesn't happen is because of the penalty to it. But if like I speculate, if the Antichrist is a hybrid, God will allow it one more time for that particular issue with the Antichrist. So, and it would be Satan himself. Yeah, Rory.
Is the term mighty men of earth connected with the earth dwellers in Revelation theme that's picked up?
Yeah, I don't know if it's connected. It's with that one. It's within context in Genesis. It's connected to Genesis 6 that this thing happened on the earth. So the hybrid situation plagued the earth. That's what caused the flood. And so I think what Moses is trying to do is not trying to connect it forward. He's trying to connect it back. And the fact that this is where it happened and this is where it happened again. And if you remember the phrase in Genesis 6, 1 through 4, it says it happened afterwards too. And so it happened in the land of Israel again as well. And so there's a connection there with Eretz and land and earth. And I think that's as far as I want to go as far as the context. If we go too far, I think we're beyond what Moses was intending. I think the point is Moses is wanting to connect it to Genesis 6. I think that's the solid argument on that one. Okay, where am I at? Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Does the name Ray Kurzweil ring a bell?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the term singularity
Mm-hmm.
and the machine is us.
Yeah, well, the whole point of Ray Kurzweil's idea is that AI will reach a singularity, and if it does, then it's out of control. You're talking, the concept of the Terminator or the concept of the Matrix, where the whole thing will turn on human beings, and that's one of the concerns that we're creating AI, and we're not putting in the safeguards for it. And so we're creating a monster, and that's one of the warnings that Kurzweil is trying to say is, you need to stop this. The problem is, and when guys who are developing AI have been confronted about this, and they know it's a danger, they're saying, well, if we don't do it, China will. Or if we don't do it, Russia will. So who would you rather have controlling AI, America or Russia? And I was interviewing Patrick Wood of Technocracy, and like he said, he goes, that's just a stupid argument, because whoever creates it, it's going to get out of control. You can't control this thing. And he won't be able to just pull the plug and the power goes off. That's not how AI will work. It will figure out how to self-sustain itself, and that's the danger of it. And we can't control it at that point. So yeah, we're like mad scientists creating Frankenstein. So that's the scary part, is it reaches the singularity where we can't control it. Yeah.
Well, Pastor, talking about Elon Musk, do you believe that he's just expanding on the 1930 technology, or does he have his own fallen angel?
I don't know if he has his own fallen angel. I think that the technology, he's very smart, no doubt about that. The AI technology has been going on for some time, before Elon Musk got involved in it. And it has been being developed, it's been worked on for decades upon decades. Whatever started it, how do I want to put this? Elon Musk is not starting it. He's already taken existing technology. A lot of these guys are already taking existing technology and modifying it. And so you have this regression that you have to go back and realize, wait a second, Elon Musk just didn't invent it. It's been going on for a long time. And what's happened is our ability to manufacture new things has now caught up with the thought. The thought's always been there. And what's happened is we haven't had the technology to do the thought. Everyone's always thought about artificial intelligence. I mean, you can look at shows in the 70s, or you can go back to Star Trek. The thought has always been there, okay? So it's always been in the mind of scientists, and you can see it in movies, right? But we didn't possess the kinds of capabilities that we have now for computing processes and all these other things. And so what you have with Elon Musk or any of these other guys from Google is they now have the money and the ability to bring that technology to the thought, if that makes sense. So I don't want to credit Elon Musk with inventing the AI. He didn't. It has always been the thought. I mean, Star Trek pictured that. Star Wars pictured that, with, robots that did computing for you, and R2-D2 and C-3PO and all these other things, and Star Trek had Borgs and cyborgs and all kinds of weird stuff. So, and I think that's the problem, is the thoughts of it has been implanted in our minds for a while. And then we finally catch up. And that's the problem. When we finally catch up, that's when it becomes dangerous. And how do I want to say this? We're eventually going to have the ability, especially with quantum computing. The invention, they didn't have quantum computing. But when you have quantum computing, that's a game changer. And we didn't have that technology with AI. So that slowed down the processing problems with AI. It took a long time. So AI could take 5 days to process something and spit out the results. You get quantum computing and you're instantaneously getting information, and we're talking trillions and trillions and trillions of pieces of information, and it spits it out in a second. So AI has been waiting, it's always been there, but now with the advent of quantum computing, it's off the chart. And a lot of them can't even explain what quantum computing is, because the laws of physics don't even work with that. So what is this stuff? They don't even know. What is quantum physics? They don't even know. They can't even tell you what is quantum physics. And so what we start realizing is they're tapping into the mysteries of the universe that allow us the technology to outrace our ability to handle it. So that's what I want to say. I guess if I would put it that way, it's not Elon Musk bringing this. He's just using developed technology and bringing the money to do it. You see what Trump's doing here in America with bringing, what is it, Stargate? Is it Stargate? Okay, Stargate. And they need these massive I don't know, warehouses for servers. And they're putting them all in Texas. And what did they say? They need 500, is it million or billion? Maybe million. $500 million just to get these servers up and running. And the problem they're going to have is they don't have enough power for the servers. So what are they going to go to? They're going to go to nuclear energy to power the servers. So that's the next stage that you're going to see in America is we're going to go nuclear to power the servers, to power the AI that's going to have quantum computing, because you have to have that kind of energy for quantum computing. Then that will eventually come to a problem that we can't control. But we're slicing our own necks. We're creating something that already tells us it wants to kill us. It already says it's like it would be better for the planet for us not to be on it. It already says that. And I think it's demonic, but... So I hope that helps. I don't know if I'm that clear. But yeah, I just wanted to make sure you knew the thought has always been there for a while. Yeah, where am I at? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to ask about piggybacking off of the giant question. So we have the Nephilim of old that were a different type of giant, and then we have kind of like their baby brothers as time goes on. And I guess it's like the Septuagint, Heiser talks about, gosh, why can't I think of his name? David and Goliath. Wow. So Goliath is a different type of giant, and there's some discrepancies on his size, and there's also discrepancies on like the size in Older Testament giants. Can you talk about that as far as like, because we see possibly Goliath only being 6'6", and then in the Old Testament, further back in like the book of Enoch, they're described as larger. Can you talk a little bit about the size difference?
I guess it depends on the genetic manipulation of the hybrid, because it wasn't just simply that it was producing giants. There's no doubt there was giants, and every ancient myth and religion has giant lore, no doubt about it. Whether the Celtics or whoever you're talking about, everyone has giants in their lore. So everybody knew about giants, but the size depended and varied based on the hybridization. And I don't know how the angels knew this, but they know how to tamper with DNA, no doubt about that. And they can create whatever they want. And what they were creating was not just simply giants, but they were creating monstrosities. And this is where the concepts of half animals, half humans, minotaurs, centaur, that kind of stuff in Greek mythology. So from what I can gather from ancient mythology and putting the corpus of the Bible together, they knew what they wanted to create, and they went with it. If they wanted to create a mermaid, they created a mermaid. If they wanted to create a snake-like, human-like creature, they did. If they wanted to create a human with a hawk head, like we see in Egypt, they did. And here's the thing. We know how to do that now, too. We know how to create designer babies. So if you went to some of these CRISPR units, and you wanted to have a baby, I want him to be 6'5". I want him to be athletic. I want him to be an IQ of 165. They can do that. So we now know, we can't create the monstrosities, but we even have the information of how to create a superhuman. Well, if we already know that, what do you think angels know? They know exactly, okay, so hybridization is right up their alley. So if you look at seraphim and you look at cherubim, what are they? They're not men with wings on their back. What are seraphim and cherubims? They are hybrids, aren't they? So like cherubim, have 4 faces? Eagle face, human face, ox face. What are there? Eagle, ox, lion, and human. And seraphs have one individual head, and some of them are different with eagle head, human head, or whatever, but their bodies are animals. And then seraphs have 6 wings, and cherubims have 4 wings. So the concepts of hybrid is very well known in heaven because God created many of his angels as hybrids. So back to how angels know how we're created. They knew about DNA before we knew about DNA. And apparently they knew how to tamper with it enough to make these hybrids. And they did. And they created a not only a human problem, but a zoological problem, because Noah then, God has to send what animals are pure back on the ark because the rest of the animals are screwed up. They're all genetically modified or half this, half that, who knows, half rat, whatever. So my conjecture, my theory, based on what I can look at all these things, is they knew what to create and why they wanted to create it. So if Goliath is so tall and the other ones are taller, it's totally up to them how they wanted to create him. Living as a giant post-flood is a little bit different than living pre-flood, because according to ancient myths, the populations before the flood fed these giants and had to supply food for them, otherwise the giants would eat them. And so that's how the cultures kept these giants at bay. That doesn't seem to be the case in Canaan when Joshua gets in there. It doesn't seem like we don't have any record of any clan feeding these things to keep them at bay. In fact, what we see is they're incorporating them into society and using them as warriors, which would be different. So maybe they were paying them off in riches and stuff, but the stories pre-flood are way different post-flood of giants. So there's something that's changed. Something has definitely changed. So that's my own theory. But that's based off the myths. Where am I at? Yeah.
Is there any correlation with Babel with pedophilia?
And what now?
Pedophilia.
Oh, yeah, totally. Within the mystery cults, you have the sexual immorality just goes off the chart, right? And so you have homosexuality, lesbianism, you have pedophilia, you have bestiality, you have everything off the chart. So the Babylonian religious cult that started, remember, it's we're going to do things differently than God. And so you know what God's commands on sexuality are. And so Babylon will do the opposite. Hence, the modern day equivalent to Babylon is everything you see under the sun. It could be pedophilia, bestiality, lesbianism, homosexuality, transgenderism. All of that is a part of the Babylonian system. And here's the thing. Sexual immorality goes hand in hand with idolatry. So when you have the worship of angels or fallen angels, what went hand in hand was sexual immorality. Do you know why? Because there is power that it gets exchanged in the sexual act in Satanology or demonology or the occult. And this is why in the occult and satanic ritual abuse, they practice pedophilia or they practice sexual immorality because they pass on power to one another in the sex act. Okay? Now again, that's not what you and I experience, obviously, in sex, but that's what happens when you're involved in the occult. And this is why they go after children. So in the occult, whether it's children's blood or children themselves, they see that as more powerful and getting more power by molesting children, pedophilia, and even drinking their blood and doing ritual sacrifice with babies or children, because there's more power in innocent blood, okay? Now, I didn't mean to scare you, but that's what Satanism does. Now, it shouldn't shock anybody in this room when you hear of Jeffrey Epstein's island or you hear of all these elites that are involved in pedophilia. There is a satanic reason they're involved in it, okay? And it comes back to deriving power from having sex with a child. That's the mentality. So that's satanic, that's occultic, that's witchcraft, all that stuff, all right? That's not just your normal, someone's molesting a child. That's not, that's what happens in covens. That's what happens in witch covens and satanic covens, and why they do child sacrifice, and why they baptize themselves in blood and stuff like that. They believe there's power in blood. They're like vampires in many regards in that sense. That's where the concept of a vampire comes from, is the drinking of blood. So the ancient cults drank blood because it symbolizes power. You would take on the power of the individual by drinking that blood, or being baptized in that blood, or having sex with the individual. So I know it's off the chart, but look, man, Hillary Clinton and John Podesta, they all got busted for spiritual cooking. You remember that? You know what spiritual cooking is? Yeah, it's bad. So you put a naked lady in a tub of blood, urine, feces, sperm, everything in and you put this naked lady in there, and you take spoonfuls and eat the stuff to gain power from the occultic practice. Hey, man. So when you hear, like, this is what John Podesta and the people around Hillary Clinton were doing, hey, man, no joke, dude. That's the evil these people are involved in. So when you see them flying to Jeffrey Epstein's island or P. Diddy or whatever the thing is, it doesn't shock me. It doesn't shock me, because they're involved in the occult. Many of these elites are involved in the occult, and that's what they practice. It comes straight from Babylon. Straight from Babylon, guys.
So getting back to the technology, I'm confused. You read these stories where you have a child that's born with a rare blood disease, and the child, grows up to the age of 4, whatever. The couple decides to have another child. The doctors take the seed or the egg from the woman, and they screen it through DNA, and they find a pure egg, and then impregnate it, and they put it back into the woman, and the child that's born, then they use the bone marrow to do a transplant to the older child and cure her as well. So in that regard, is that considered demonic? It does good by their actions.
Yeah.
The other child lives longer and is cured, which they couldn't cure. She was always having to have transfusions.
Yeah.
So I get confused when I read stories like that. So
yeah, no, it's and I think what you have to keep in mind is your categories, and so there's elements. This is how they sell it. There is good that comes from it, no doubt about that. Absolutely. And so when Elon Musk says, "Look, we're going to be able to cause people that can't walk to walk by Neuralink, and people that are blind, they can see." And so those are good things, right? People would say, well, why are you against that? Not at all. I'm not against that at all. What I am against is putting something in my brain that causes me to think a different way. That's the negative that they don't tell you about. So that's the thing you have to weigh out, is there's always a benefit to something, but then you have to weigh out, okay, what's the cost of doing that? And so in the cost of that has to be weighed out. And if the cost is, well, yeah, we can help someone walk, but at the same time, we're going to create a DNA eruption and create a virus that will kill half the human population because we're tampering with DNA. And we don't know what we're doing, because even CRISPR will admit they can go in there and take out a cancer gene, but then they take out 1,000 other things that thing did, and they don't know what the other thousands are. And they don't know the ramifications of the other 1,000 things they took out. Did that set the kid up for Alzheimer's? Did it set the kid up for heart problems? Did it set the kid up? So maybe it cured him of cancer, but then it gave him a whole host of other diseases they would not have ever had. That's what they don't know from CRISPR. And so they're infantile right now in their development of DNA. They know how to mess around with it, no doubt about that. but they don't know all the ramifications of what they're doing because there's thousands of things associated to just taking one little piece out. And I don't know how to explain it very well, but that's the other thing. And so, I'll give you an example. In vitro fertilization, okay? So in order to do in vitro fertilization, so you have an ethical problem there. So a couple can't have a baby, so they do it in vitro. But the problem is, in most of the cases, and unless you have a doctor that's different, in most of the in vitro fertilizations, you are going to make one happen, you have the other eggs that have been fertilized by the sperm, you will kill them in order to get the one. Okay? You'll let the other ones die. Ethically, you can't do that. That's equivalent to an abortion. So, well, Brandon, you have one life come from that and you give the couple a baby. Yeah, I know, but you killed 7 babies to get the one. So ethically, the ends doesn't justify the means. Now, don't get me wrong. I've talked to other couples that have done in vitro, and their doctor assured them that wouldn't happen, and they would spare it. Okay, that's fine. If that's, and I don't know that. I don't know if they can do that, but apparently their doctor assured them that I could do that, and that's fine. Okay, then they didn't have to run into that problem. But generally speaking, that's what happens. You have to take the one and let the other ones die. Well, if we believe that life begins at conception, that's it. That's it. And you can't monkey around with that. You have 7 in a petri dish that are life, human life. So as an example, so I think that's the thing is, man, you have to weigh that out, and and that's the ethical dilemma that's gonna come right now to us with Neuralink and all these other things. They're gonna say, we can make the paralyzed walk again, Brandon. Yeah, but then at what cost? Well, we have to put a thing in your head and your brain, and then okay, who's gonna control that? And who controls the information in that? Because Yuval Noah Harari says that the way you and I think, the Christians, we think in false narratives, and we have to be corrected, and he's all for putting a Neuralink chip in our brains to stop us from thinking in this false propaganda. Now that scares me, that he wants to control my thinking. And here's, I think, where it goes, and to a bigger problem. When this technology, it's gonna come, there's nothing stopping it, guys. There's nothing stopping this. When it comes and it falls into the hands of the Antichrist, he will not be able just to simply control people from the outside. He will control people on the inside. And that's one of the elements I did not recognize when I was reading the scriptures a long time ago, until the advent of the technology that we have now. That you can control people on the inside, that it will be biotech. It will be under the skin, as Yuval Harari says. It will be in your body controlling you. That's a whole new dilemma. To be able to control thinking, control your body functions. And so maybe this explains this. And again, I'm theorizing. So when the Antichrist, and we're not going to be here for that, and thank God. So when the Antichrist sets up the image to be worshiped of him, so John says that this image, this ultimate idol of the Antichrist, has the ability to speak. And he uses the word pneuma, that has breath, but it's not zoe in Greek. It's not biological life, but it's pneuma, which means it has an energizing force through it. It could be wind, it could be electricity, or whatever. It has an energizing force. That's what pneuma means. And yet this thing has the ability to speak and kill you if you don't bow a knee to it. Okay? So thinking biotech, if I had something underneath my skin, could they do a kill switch on me? yeah, I don't think that's out of the realm. Again, I'm speculating. Please understand, I'm speculating, but I'm using what I understand about technology right now. If that's what they're wanting to do is put the chip under my skin, I can't buy and sell without the mark or whatever, and will they put a kill switch in that to where hey, you don't worship that, kill them? How does this thing, how is it able to kill me if I don't bow a knee to the Antichrist? And again, we're not here for this, you understand that, but I'm talking about the people living in the tribulation. How would it just flat out kill them if they don't bow a knee? My only guess is the technology has a kill switch in it. And it just, that's it, you're done. I don't know. Or maybe it's drones and they send drones to your house and they kill you. I don't know. Something kills you. So I think what you're seeing here, and you're making a good point with the technology at Babylon was new technology. We're going to do it now, and we don't need God because we have technology. And what are they saying about technology? Here's an interesting thing. Technology merges with the transhumanistic movement. Have you noticed that? They are together. So you have technology that they're saying, we're going to create humans 2.0. We're going to give you the ability to be like Wolverine. We're going to give you the ability to be like these X-Men. And that you will be able to live longer. You will be able to be smarter. Imagine you having the brain IQ of 1,000, okay? And imagine you being able to live forever. And look, we can replace your body parts, and you could just continue on. Wait a second, what's happening here? They're promising you eternal life, and they're playing God with you, aren't they? It sounds like that to me. Elon Musk, and again, he's doing a lot of good things, but when Elon Musk says, I think he said this, that it'll give you the ability to walk, the lame will walk, the blind will see. Does that sound familiar? I think I read that somewhere. That's a counterfeit for what Messiah is able to do, right? The deaf will hear, the blind will see, the lame will walk. And they're saying that? Okay, so all that to say is, yeah, that's the ethical issues are going to get so complicated, a lot of Christians won't know which way to go on the ethics on it because it's going to cross lines. There's going to be a lot of things that are crossing lines, and it's like, I don't know if we're ready for that. I don't know morally if we're ready for that kind of thing. I think about this. Okay, where's the ethics of you creating a designer baby? I'm not saying keeping a baby free from disease, but I'm saying, hey, you know what? Here's what I'm going to do, man. I want my baby to be an NFL star. And so we're going to genetically engineer. I'm going to pay $30,000. I'm going to pay this or whatever, and I'm going to design the kind of kid I want. What are you doing at that point? You know what I mean? So is that equivalent to a parent that will not accept their child when they're told, your child has Down syndrome in your womb, we recommend you abort your child? You see what I'm saying? You're getting into ethics here that, okay, I'm not doing that, but I'm doing this. And I'm telling you, man, you're walking a real fine line here. You're treading into areas of God at that point when you're starting to design your child. I ethically, I don't think that's a good move. I don't think it's going to backfire on people when they start doing that. But they will. They will. Okay, any more questions? Clear as mud, right? Okay, let's do this, because we're remaining a few minutes. Let me finish this off, and then that'll be it, okay? And we'll finish this off. So the last phrase is this: let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. So the concept of let us make a name for ourselves is tied to Genesis 6, whereas the giants and the hybrids were the men of renown. They had the name. And so Moses is linking this with they want their own name magnified and glorified rather than God's. That's the idea. We're going to become the gods of this world. And so it's self-seeking glory and all of that. Okay, so what ends up happening is this concept of we want to make a name for ourselves has to do with you thinking you're a god, okay? And Nimrod obviously thinks he's a god, and in fact, the civilization will turn him into a god. Nimrod will become the god of Babylon, and his name will be Marduk. And then he will take on different names and trappings. Nimrod's wife, this is weird, her name is Semiramis, and she will become a female deity in the Babylonian religion. And then they will have a child, and his name will be Tammuz. And they will all be worshipped. But then what will happen, according to legend, is Tammuz will be killed by a wild animal, and then he will resurrect from the dead. And what ends up starting after that myth is what we call the Madonna child cult in Babylon. So where you have the worship of the female deity, and her name is Semiramis, but her other name is Queen of Heaven. And she holds Tammuz with her. And so you worship her and the little baby who resurrected, was killed by animals and resurrected, and you worship her as the Madonna child cult. Now, if you go to Egypt, you will find that. If you go to, what's Greek? It's Greek, I get confused with Greek and Roman. Venus and Cupid. Am I right on my Greek? Venus is Roman, so you're Aphrodite. It's Aphrodite. And is Cupid Greek? What? No, he's Roman. Is it? Okay. Well, anyway, okay. So Venus and Cupid, Roman. Yeah? Okay. Venus and Cupid are Roman. But that's the mother child, right? And I can't remember what the Greek is. It's Aphrodite and something else. I can't remember. But you will see this mother-child cult in all the ancient cultures. And you'll see, and it comes straight from Babylon. It's in Egypt, it's in Greece, it's in Rome, it's in Phoenician, it's Sumerian, it's all over the place, okay? This mother-child cult. And you can even see the archaeology remains of this. And guess where else we see it? The Catholic Church, thank you very much. It's flat out, in your face, straight up on you, the mother-child cult in the Catholic Church. And like I said, Babylon entered Rome in church history. And Rome took on a lot of the Babylonian practices, and they brought in the mother-child cult. And again, they called it Mary and baby Jesus, but it really came from that trappings of the Babylonian cult. Now, funny thing is, in Babylonian terminology, she is called the Queen of Heaven. Guess what the Catholics call Mary? The Queen of Heaven. And they also call her Theotokos, the Mother of God. Did you catch what I just said? Mary is not Theotokos. God has no mother. Mary is the mother of the human nature of Jesus. She is not the mother of God. But they give her that term in the Catholic Church, which hypervenerates her, but is equivalent to Semiramis in Babylon. So that's the weird thing that got carried over into Catholicism. Now, I grew up Catholic, and I saw Semiramis all the time. I saw Tammuz. It wasn't Jesus. It's not baby Jesus. It's Tammuz. And isn't it funny? He resurrected from the dead. Oh, and let me add one more thing. Since we're in the Lenten time, which is Babylon. Babylon don't ever practice Lent. That is Babylon. Why? Because they wept and fasted for the death of Tammuz for 40 daes. And when the 40 days started, they had a big feast and they pigged out. Does that sound familiar? What do we call that in Catholicism on that Wednesday? It's Ash Wednesday. And Fat Tuesday is before it, where you pig out. You remember? It's Fat Tuesday. You good Catholics know better. You know, you Fat Tuesday, and then you have to go into your McDonald's filet of fishes on Fridays, right? Because that's what we did. Filet of fishes on Fridays. Okay, but here's the thing. So Babylon went into a 40-day fast for the weeping of Tammuz, and then Tammuz was resurrected on that 40th day, so to speak. And so they had a time where they did that. Isn't it interesting that 40 days of fasting and weeping entered into the Catholic Church? Wow. Why would they incorporate that? I told you, Babylon entered the Catholic Church through that. And interesting enough, when you look at the Catholicism, they have made Mary, they say they don't, but they do. They have made Mary a quadrity because there's many, many Catholics that worship Mary. Now they say that we don't advocate that. I know you don't, but I want you to look out in your pews and what the people are doing in the pews because they're worshiping her. And you're not stopping them. And they're doing it. They're praying to Mary, worshiping her, and all this other stuff. And then you add into the apparitions of Mary that come out, okay? And Medjugorje, Yugoslavia, and you have, where's the other place at? Lourdes, France, different places like that. There's a great book by, I think, Ron Rhodes it's called The Cult of the Virgin by Ron Rhodes. And he studied the apparitions of Medjugorje and Lourdes, France, and the other, and what's the one in Mexico? I can't remember. Guadalupe, yeah, Guadalupe. And they studied that, the messaging that came from these apparitions. And dude, it's so demonic. It's so demonic. It's not Mary, it's demonic. And what I told you, demonics are shapeshifters. And they can transform themselves into an angel of light or appear like Mary. But everything that comes out of this apparition's mouth is totally demonic. And yet thousands go to Lourdes, France, or they go to all these places in Mexico or wherever, and they think they're going to get a blessing. It's totally demonic, totally demonic. So my point is, Babylon is still with us, guys. It hasn't went away. It's still with us. It's still with the technology. It's still with the wokeism. It's in the church. It's in the church. And the name that she's trying to make is making a name for herself. Be ahead of God. And let me end here. If you look at Revelation, the whore of Babylon is mocking the church. Have you ever seen that? She talks about all her suitors and how many people are fornicating with her, and they've become rich off of her fornication. And she says something to the effect. Let me get their exact words. I want to read it to you. But she's mocking the church. 18:7. In the measure that she glorified herself and lived luxuriously, in the same measure give her torment and sorrow, for she says in her heart. Now listen to this. I sit as queen, and I am no widow, and will not see sorrow. How is she mocking the church when she says, I sit as queen, I am no widow, and will not see sorrow? How is she mocking the church? I'm the real queen, she says, not you. See, the church is the bride of the Messiah. I am the queen. And then she says, I am no widow. You know why she's saying that? She's saying that you, the church, are the widow. Where's your bridegroom? She's mocking us. I have many suitors, but where is your bridegroom? He abandoned you, didn't he? You see what she's doing? She's mocking the church. And so, obviously, she gets put in her place. But the idea is Babylon mocks the people of God all the way to the end. That your God has abandoned you. You're alone. You're a widow. You're by yourself. You're no bride. I'm the queen, not you. And so she's taunting us, and she continues to taunt us until her doom is coming in the future. Anyway, we got to run. Let's pray. Father, thank you, Lord, for what we can learn tonight about Babylon. And Father, it's amazing. We see things getting set up right now in front of us, right in front of our face. The technology, the ideology, it's all there, Father. And Father, we thank you so much that we will be raptured. We don't have to see a lot of this, but we definitely are seeing the setup. Help us, Father, to sound the alarm, to wake people up to what's happening in this world. We pray in Jesus' name, amen.